There is some interesting things happening in Gaza, and I would venture to call them shenanigans in some cases. I'm in Guam today, but I'm gonna, and I don't have a ton of time because I've got to get on a flight to Saipan actually here in a little bit. But I wanted to get on a live and talk about what's going on in Gaza because it could definitely affect the outcome of the war. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the Israelis giving evacuation orders for evacuation orders for the entire southern part of the Gaza Strip, all of Rafah, up into areas where the Israelis actually haven't even been yet. And if that sounds strange to you, like it does to me, like the Gaza Strip's not that big. They've been looking for their hostages, and so they haven't, there's places in Gaza where they haven't been at all. That's a little sketchy. What's up with that? Now, I've heard that there have been points where the IDF knew that there were hostages in certain areas, and they knew that they were extremely well guarded and that they would be killed if Israel pushed into those areas and got too close. And so they avoided going into those areas. That could be something to do with it, but apparently these are fairly wide swaths of territory between Rafah and Khan Yunis in the center part of Gaza that have not been touched by the ground troops of the IDF just yet. Now, just because the ground troops haven't been in there does not mean that they have not been bombing in there, and they likely have been bombing in those regions. But they issued an evacuation warning for Palestinians in suburbs of Khan Yunis all the way down to Rafah. And they said that there were attacks coming out of those areas, and they were going to strike in there. So they have now. They now have struck those areas. This is the largest evacuation order that they have made to date inside Gaza. So what we're seeing is preparation for something bigger. I think reading between the lines here, we can say that the IDF is pushing more troops into Gaza than they've had there before. They're clearing out areas of Gaza they've not been in before, and they're starting to bomb inside those areas to soften them up. Those are all called shaping operations, and it probably means that they're massing for a final push into those areas, and they may find some hostages or some remains going in there. They just recently found some sort of remains of a hostage. They're not sure if he's dead or not. They found some fragments, it said, of the apparently something from this hostage. Not the hostage himself, maybe pieces of clothing, maybe DNA. There's a DNA vacuum that you can go into a room, and even if you can't find a hair or a fingernail or something like that to get to get DNA evidence from, they have these DNA vacuums now. They can go in and actually vacuum the whole area, and just even the cells, the dead skin that fall off of everybody, or anything like that, they will get picked up in this vacuum, and they'll be able to find DNA evidence that somebody was in a place without actually finding pieces of that person or something like that. Okay, so that may be what they found, but they just recently found evidence of one of the hostages in an area that they had just pushed into. The IDF is expanding its ground offensive, as I mentioned. They pushed into several different neighborhoods, and they're expanding the buffer zones all around the edges of Gaza. Now, this is significant because the Prime Minister is saying that, look, if we don't get our hostages back, we're going to continue to expand that buffer zone, and we're going to keep it. We're not going to allow people to live there. So Gaza is getting smaller day after day, and it's going to keep getting smaller until we get our hostages back. That's essentially the message that Netanyahu is putting out. And so, I mean, pretty significant changes here in what the IDF and the Israeli government are looking to do in Gaza. And it's not just we want to get our hostages back. It's not just we want to wipe out Hamas. It's like, if you don't give our hostages back, we're going to start keeping land here. And that obviously is being roundly condemned by the international body, the United Nations, and all those worthless people over there. But I mean, I think it's a just and reasonable thing to do. It's like, look, it's been more than 500 days. You haven't given our hostages back. We're going to get our hostages back, or you're going to lose Gaza. You can't have Gaza. And we'll stay there. So this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, you know. Now, they believe there have been more than 30,000 rockets and missiles and drones fired at Israel since the beginning of this war, from all sides, from all of the different areas that are shooting at them. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, the Houthis, and Gaza. And they believe that Hamas had about 20,000 rockets at the beginning of the war. Now they believe they have about 2,000 left. So that's not nothing, but they've certainly degraded their capabilities, and they're finding more every day and destroying them. So it is very likely that they're going to be able to completely wipe out the rocket arsenal that Hamas had. The problem is Hamas can always just go get more. If they let Hamas stay in Gaza, they're going to be able to rebuild that over time by ripping up water systems as they've done in the past, by cutting down light poles, by getting, deliveries from Iran secretly in the middle of the night, floated in off the coast. They have a special unit, or had a special unit of Hamas, who their only job was to swim out and pick up packages of missiles and swim them back into shore, right? So this is something they're going to be able to do again. So just getting rid of the missiles is not enough. It's not what they need to finish this fight, okay? So folks, it is about 5:40 in the morning here in Guam, and I'm heading to the airport in just a little bit to take a flight to Saipan in the Northern Marianas Islands. So I'll be reporting from there over the next couple of days. We're going to also go to Tinian, so stay tuned for that. We're putting up some pretty amazing stuff, and if you missed it, I did a video just a little late last night for us, early in the morning for you, about the what's going on between the United States and Iran, and so I don't need to necessarily rehash all of that. If you want to know what's going on in the conflict between the United States, the Houthis, and Iran, just go watch that video. It's already had like 30,000 views over there, so you can find it real easy just looking at the videos on the channel here. Please, while you're at it, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Folks, we got like 1,000 people watching, and we need more likes, so YouTube knows to show this to people that haven't seen it before. And that's how we grow the channel. we really are punching above our weight as a YouTube channel. And so that is thanks in part to me reminding you and you guys going and hitting the like button. So it's a bigger deal than it sounds for you to actually do that. Now, I always forget, so I try to remind you it is important. Also, you're going to want to go over to chuckholton.com. We're going to do two things here, actually three things I want to talk about on chuckholton.com. We're going to be running a giveaway to give away some of my most recent book for new supporters over there between now and Friday. Okay, so if you're not a supporter at chuckholton.com and you want to get a free copy, hard copy of my new book, Death of Civilization, go and become a supporter at chuckholton.com and you can get on the list for that giveaway. If we don't have a bunch of people sign up, then everybody that signs up is going to get a book, because it just depends on how many we get. We've got 10 books to give away. So on top of that, we're also doing a live locals, we're going to do a Zoom call where you can actually talk to me directly, and we could have kind of last time I think we had 50 or 60 people watching, and everybody was asking questions, and we had a great discussion. I got to see what you guys look like for once, so I don't get freaked out when you come running up to me at the airport. And it was a real success. We really enjoyed it, so we're going to do it again here coming up shortly. And so also, Amy is telling me that we're going to do a $10 off for 1 year. If you become a supporter and pay yearly, you save money already doing that, but we're going to do $10 off of that as well. And look, it makes a big difference. We're using that money to help people around the world, and we're being able to help a ton of people because of the generosity of you guys supporting us, keeping us in the field over at chuckholton.com. Okay, let's talk about threats from Hezbollah. So the new leader of Hezbollah, if you want to call him that, he doesn't want to be called the leader because he knows he's going to get targeted. These guys, if you're a leader of Hezbollah, man, you shouldn't be buying any green bananas, that's for sure. His name is Naim Qassem. He threatened to resume the war in Israel if Israel keeps striking Lebanon. So Hezbollah is saying that they're going to go back to war against Israel if they continue striking Lebanon. Well, the only reason they struck Lebanon was because there were rockets fired at Israel. So what are you threatening us with? You're threatening us to continue doing what you're still doing, what you're already doing? And I think Israel's kind of like, bring it, because we will beeper you into the middle of next week. Can I renew way ahead of my renewal date to save the $10? That's a good question. Whoever is moderating might be able to answer that. Yeah, all these one-eyed, three-fingered Hezbollah operatives are really scary to the Israelis now. The Israelis are like, yeah, yeah, you guys, whatever. You're a sideshow at this point. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't still have quite a few missiles, probably. It's just that they have a real hard time getting to them, because if they move anywhere, they get bombed from the sky. And Israel is watching extremely closely inside Lebanon. As a matter of fact, they've still got troops that are right there, right? Lebanese media outlets claim that the IDF fired 10 phosphorus bombs toward an area of southern Lebanon. Their existence as a military entity, Hezbollah's existence as a military entity, legitimizes Israeli attacks on Lebanon. And that's a quote from a guy named Charles Jabbour of the Lebanese Forces Party. So Hezbollah is a political party inside Lebanon, but there are a lot of the other political parties inside Lebanon that are saying maybe it would be a good idea if they weren't, because they just attract a lot of ordnance on our heads, and we'd really like to see that stop. So maybe we should consider getting rid of Hezbollah. And that's something that should happen a long, long time ago. But it bears pointing out that the United States has been funding Hezbollah indirectly in Lebanon for a long time. And part of the reason that Hezbollah is as strong as they are today is specifically because of the programs from the USAID and the State Department that were giving money, and still are in some cases, giving money to UNIFIL, the UN interim force in Lebanon, and the Lebanese army. We're giving them Humvees and weapons and stuff, which kind of seems, I mean, I guess the whole point was for the Lebanese army to be able to crack down on terrorism. Well, we saw how that worked. Actually, they got, a lot of their weapons were used in terrorism. And so maybe we got to quit funding those guys and help the Lebanese government get rid of Hezbollah once and for all. Okay? So there was a plot in the West Bank. The Shin Bet announced the foiling of a Hamas plot to carry out a shooting and bombing attack. 6 members of the Hamas cell from Nablus were detained by Israeli forces. It was directed and funded by Hamas in, this is significant here. Okay, so Hamas, we know they have operatives in Gaza, obviously, we're trying to get rid of them. We know they have operatives in Judea and Samaria and the Hebron, trying to get rid of them. There's a lot more of them to get rid of. But this cell that they uncovered in Nablus was funded by Hamas in Turkey. Okay, did you hear what I said? That Hamas now has an office in Turkey that is funding terror in Israel. Now, if I was president of the United States, this would merit a conversation with President Erdogan, because we can't have Turkey hosting Hamas. And so if Turkey's not going to crack down on those guys, then we would have a problem, because Turkey's supposed to be our ally. And they're not. They're not our ally in any way, shape, or form. So they were planning a major attack near a road junction. And there was a bomb that was already planted that was neutralized. And so they managed to arrest all those guys, and they're going to be indicting them this week. There was another terrorist suspect that was killed in a raid in the West Bank. And okay, so I gotta watch the time here, because I gotta get to the airport. The Israeli hostage that they found some of his stuff, and the hostage's name is Manny Goddard, and they recovered some belongings, I guess. Okay, so he was murdered and kidnapped by PIJ on October 7th. So they found his some of his belongings at an outpost area in Rafah. So they're bringing in the Institute for Forensic Medicine and the Israeli police, and are continuing to look for his remains. They have never been able to recover his body yet, and that's what they're hoping to do. So Hamas also executed a Palestinian activist, 22-year-old Palestinian, who had been facilitating some of these protests. They tortured him to death. And so there's that, right? He's not the only one. They say that they have executed at least 6 collaborators, people who were fomenting these protests against Hamas. So, okay, maybe Hamas wasn't behind the protests then, and they were legit, but we see Hamas being Hamas now in Gaza. Now, there's been several announcements by the Trump administration and Hamas lately that they've agreed to a ceasefire. I've heard this, and it's just poor journalism. A lot of journalists, they want to put it out and make it sound like something that it's not. And so they've said there's a new ceasefire in Gaza where Hamas is going to release 5 hostages in exchange for a 50-day ceasefire up until like Passover. Well, no, that was what Hamas offered to do. In response, Israel said, no, how about you release 11 hostages for a 40-day ceasefire? And they haven't agreed on anything. So no hostages have been released, and there's no ceasefire. And like Benjamin Netanyahu says, look, we're willing to have another ceasefire if we can get back some of our people, but we're not going to do this thing that just tortures our people in drips and drabs nonstop, okay? So we're going to have to continue fighting until Hamas comes to the table with something serious. Now, a senior Hamas official said that that no deal that they're going to make will require them to give up their weapons. That Hamas is going to keep its weapons and they're going to stay in power. So read all of that to say the fighting is going to continue in Gaza for the foreseeable future, because there is no agreement. They're not coming to an agreement. It's kind of like the quote-unquote agreement that the Trump administration keeps trying to announce with Ukraine. That whole thing is falling apart. Russia's not playing ball. Ukraine's not playing ball. The Trump administration's standing there holding the bag at this point, and kind of it's not a good look for America. But it wouldn't be such a bad look if they didn't jump the gun and try to count their chickens before they hatch and announce something that is not actually agreed upon yet, right? There was another ballistic missile interception from Yemen yesterday. It was fired by the Houthis, obviously, and they intercepted it before it got into before it got into Israeli airspace. For their part, the Houthi Baghdad Mob accepted responsibility for launching this ballistic missile at Ben Gurion Airport. Never made it anywhere near Ben Gurion Airport. They didn't stop flights or anything like that. So the Houthis continuing to Houthi and make themselves a parody all alone. They're self-parody all the time. I think Houthis is going to become like an adjective. That guy Houthi, he got, or, you know, he's a Houthi. I guess that'd be a noun. Just to call somebody a joke, you just call him a Houthi at this point. What a Houthi that is. So, okay. Now, here's the last and most important thing I've got. I got 5 minutes left. A mass grave was found over the last couple of days with a bunch of bodies in it from the Red Cross, these medics that were killed in Gaza. So the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent announced the deaths of 8 of their medics killed in heavy fire in Rafah on March 23rd. So this is going back a week. And 1 person is still missing. They condemned the attack as a war crime, noting the medics' emblem should have protected them. This is the deadliest attack on Red Crescent workers since 2017, bringing the total killed in Gaza to 30. Now, here's the thing. The media is trying to portray this as Israel struck this convoy and killed all these people, but the International Red Cross is not saying that. They're not going so far as to say that it was Israel that did it. And so there's apparently at least some, there's some uncertainty concerning who actually shot this convoy. But I think you can read between the lines a little bit, because they found all of these bodies in a mass grave, hastily dug, covered up, and just left. Okay, so Hamas did not come forward right away and say, here's the bodies of all these people that Israel killed. They just buried them and covered them up. If Hamas didn't kill them, then Hamas probably would have been parading their bodies through the streets and blaming Israel. So I would say, I think, number one, Israel doesn't target convoys of ambulances as a general rule, right? So, you know, I would say that it is. Now, the BBC says the IDF admitted to firing on some suspicious vehicles, and there have been many instances where ambulances have been used by Hamas to transport their fighters during this war, and Israel knows that. And so if they're watching from the sky and they see guys with guns getting into a bunch of ambulances and driving, driving off, then they're a legitimate military target. And the IDF has every right to drop a bomb on them. But so while the IDF admits to firing on some, quote, suspicious vehicles, they're not coming right out and admitting to firing up this particular convoy. And again, with the fact that Hamas just hastily hid the bodies, kind of says to me that it's likely Israel did not. That is worth noting today as we come down to the end of this live. Now, I'm sorry I haven't been able to get to your questions because I've got to get to the airport here, so I was only slated for 30 minutes here today. And if you have pressing questions, feel free to email them to info@holtonnews.com. Don't forget, folks, that we're going to do a $10 off promo on becoming an annual supporter over at chuckholton.com. That's very helpful to our ministry to people around the world. And we're also going to be giving away 10 of my new book, Death of Civilization. We're going to be drawing those out of a hat from people who have signed up for new annual subscriptions over there at chuckholton.com. So please make sure you are subscribed to the Hot Zone. Please make sure you hit that like button and share this with your friends. And I appreciate all of you very much from beautiful Guam. We're gonna, let's see here. I was pan around. The sun's starting to come up. That's this is Tumon Bay. And so we've been putting up a lot of cool beach videos, but yeah, we're at a different hotel now, so a little bit different view, but very nice. We've enjoyed our time here, and looking forward to getting to Saipan. We've got some really cool stories to put together for you over there. So thank you very much for watching. God bless you, and we will see you again on the next one. Take care.